Welcome back to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the Formula, where we set the standard for responsibility, the ability to respond to our choices, and accountability, the ability to own what follows from those choices. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Today is going to be another in the series of the forensics that I've been doing this year. I kind of enjoy it. I hope you are as well. Today I'm going to talk about the forensics of self-righteousness. We're going to break down this performance of virtue, the addiction to outrage, and the culture-wide, what I would say, the culture-wide refusal to look inward, especially when the mirror's reflection isn't that flattering. Here we go.
Culture journalist Taylor Lorenz is here to explain. All right, try and explain this to me. You feel joy. Those are your words. So you felt joy over the murder of this father. No, those are the words you use. You can shake your head all you want.
No,
we have the tape. We have the tape. And number one, then you go on to say, and people wonder why we want these executives dead. Then you posted an image of the Blue Cross CEO, Kim Keck. Now, let me ask you, what part of this United Healthcare CEO being a father and a husband don't you understand? And what part of you having a choice of what healthcare provider you choose to deal with or not do you not understand? Because you don't have to go with United. You don't have to go with Blue Cross.
So let me just be extra clear. Never did I say that I felt joy in his death. I said very explicitly, if you play the full segment, and actually people can watch that segment on my YouTube in full, not the edited version that Piers showed. I said that I felt joy, along with millions of other Americans, that the brutality of our healthcare system was finally being acknowledged.
Your comments basically put your seal of approval on murder and assassination. And I'm trying to understand whether you like this guy, like the way he does business or not, you're advocating and putting a smiley face on assassination. And I'm trying to understand what is in your soul that doesn't understand he's a father and a husband here. What are you missing? There seems to be a missing chip with you.
Sean, if you'd like to hear, I will need to talk in order to explain.
I don't want the rationalization. I want you to think about what you said. Explain what you said. I know exactly what I said. Again,
I'm attempting to right now, so I'd ask you to please give the space and try to listen. The other clip. So the other clip that you played is not me saying my own beliefs. I have quite different beliefs from that. What I'm describing, and if you watch the full segment, not just the clip, you'll see that I'm describing the mentality of these fangirls that show up outside Luigi's court and show up outside his jail cell. I'm describing the belief system of his supporters, Sean. Oh,
why don't you condemn them?
Hello?
Will you say that anyone that praises this guy is lacking a soul, a conscience, and a heart? Do you agree with that statement?
Well, what I will say, Sean, once again, is that I believe in free speech.
I just asked you a very direct question. Will you say that anyone that's praising this guy doesn't have a soul, a conscience, and a heart?
I don't believe in things like, religious things like souls and all of these things.
I'm not asking about religious. If you can't have sympathy for a dead father and husband, do you lack a conscience, a soul, and a heart? That's a simple question. You're a smart woman.
Let's talk about and break down what just happened there. That was not a conversation. That was a courtroom where Mr. Sean Hannity, playing judge, jury, gatekeeper of moral correctness, which I think is pretty interesting. Sean's insistence that Taylor condemn whatever, the people that, are, holding up Luigi or, the fact that Luigi even, took a gun to that guy from United Healthcare. The question that came up to me when I was watching that is, well, for what purpose? What is your self-interest? What is your self-motivation in trying to get her to condemn? And I thought, it would be interesting if she had, piped back at him. I mean, she was so involved in trying to defend herself, right? Because that's what that kind of behavior is. I think it's interesting that he wants to list his credential, that I've been doing this for 30 years or whatever the hell it is that he said. It's like, Sean, someone should tell you that time in a position is not necessarily a credential for doing something well. But so what does condemnation, wow, there we go. What does that give you, Sean? And the thing that came up for me was validation, that he wants to leverage his self-righteousness, and he wants to have a claim, that right to claim victimhood, which I think is a very interesting, turn to go, right? That he probably doesn't even think of it that way. He probably doesn't think of it as, I'm claiming a right to be a victim, but he actually is. When you're demanding that others condemn, you are not searching for the truth. You're trying to frame yourself as the righteous sufferer in a battle of good versus evil. You're not listening. You're labeling, which is what he clearly was doing. You're not seeking clarity. You're you're auditioning for victimhood, which I think is so fascinating. And here's the loss that I think we had from this exchange, that Sean's self-righteousness wouldn't allow Taylor to speak freely. And in doing so, he robbed us, the audience, of what could have been a true revelation of who she really is. Instead of exposure, we got control. And all his, conversation, where it wasn't conversation, his questions that were just hammer, hammer, hammer. And when she wouldn't answer, you hammer, hammer, I'm going to ask you again. And instead of character, we got this chaos going on. And honestly, instead of the truth, what we got was the self-righteousness wrapped in virtue signaling that fuels that self-inflicted victimization. Okay, so here is a thought. You cannot live in responsibility and accountability if your identity is rooted in victimhood. You cannot live in responsibility and accountability if your identity is rooted in victimhood. Write that down. If you're clinging to the comfort of being wronged by people, blaming other people, you will never step into the power of being responsible. Victimhood will get you sympathy, no doubt. There's enough people out there that you could market that and they will buy. Responsibility will get you peace and harmony in your life. Accountability will bring that homeostasis, that balance to your life, where life is with ease. One will, maybe give you applause, maybe get people, on your side of sorts. But you know what? The other one, it's going to give you freedom. It's going to give you that reality of freedom, that ability to be unfettered, unchained, no longer, feeling that anxiety of always being a victim to everything. Do you want real growth? If you do, then you have to stop demanding that others perform outrage, right? And you start holding yourself to the standard and that self-assessment and that self-correction. Condemnation isn't about justice. I don't care who's saying it. It doesn't matter. It isn't. It's about control. You're trying to control the conversation. And what's really interesting is you're forcing a person to say something that they may or may not want to say. But what does that do? That person can just sit there and say, yeah, sure, I condemn it. And then walk away and tell their friends, that guy's an a-hole. And I don't condemn that at all. I mean, it doesn't really do anything. It's like telling someone, tell me you love me. If I have to tell you, you probably don't. And you probably should move on. Okay, but victim identity will short circuit personal responsibility. If you always identify as a victim, then you're just filtering the world through everything happening to me instead of because of me and the choices that I've made and the ownership of those choices and everything that follows. Self-righteousness, that will just prevent the revelation in others and in ourselves. Because when we think we're right, what do we start doing? We start manipulating a conversation to go the way we think it should go. And then we start finding ways to cajole or rationalize or get a person to say something that is not in their nature. It's always been way more interesting to me to have a conversation with someone where I just step back and I ask a question and then I'm quiet and I let them answer the question. I let them reveal the true nature of who they are. I let them expose the true nature of who they are. If they've moved towards that good nature within them, then it's going to say it. It's going to come out of their mouth. It's going to show in their actions. And if they have not, what is it going to show? The exact opposite. This performative outrage that Sean Hannity has, it sacrifices the truth on the altar of his ego, if you will. Now, that sounded kind of fun. That performative outrage sacrifices truth on the altar of ego. So, when you're thinking about that particular clip, maybe ask yourself a couple of questions. Where am I demanding condemnation instead of seeking understanding? Because the minute you start asking for condemnation, the entire conversation has gone off the rails. Because when you're doing that, you're not seeking any understanding. You're trying to force the other person to say something that is not in their nature. And basically, when you think about it, you're just scamming yourself. Because even if they say all the things that you want them to say, because you force them to say it, what good is it? They can walk away and be whoever they are, out of your presence. I mean, that's why, I would tell clients when I was a therapist and a counselor, to observe the person that's in their life, whoever it is, their family member, a partner, someone they want to date, whoever it is, somebody at work. Just observe them. Observe who they are. Don't give them tips on how to manipulate and control you. Instead, observe who they are and then make note of it and decide, do I want to move towards that person or away from them? And then the other thing is are you using outrage to avoid introspection? Are you using your outrage to avoid the self-evaluation and self-correction of your own behavior? Because we've talked about this before. When you're in emotion, you are out of reality. When you are in emotion, you are out of reality. Emotions are those little tiny indicators that are just telling you, pay attention to something. It is not encouraging or urging you to be living in emotion. And when you are in outrage, obviously, outrage is a pretty strong word, then you're high in your emotions, and you're high in your emotions, and you are completely out of reality. But a lot of people will do that, so they avoid responsibility and accountability of that introspection, of that self-evaluation and that self-correction, because they're off distracting and deflecting for themselves. And then, another question would be what truth do you miss because you were too busy performing your virtue signaling? What are the realities that, Sean Hannity is missing or he's not even being gracious to his audience and letting them figure it out and decipher it. Don't lead the witness. You don't need to lead the witness. We can figure it out for ourselves. But it's amazing how he spends all this time, and Sean does this a lot, where, he just thinks that, he is the smartest person in the room. He is the sage. I've been doing this a long time. And, and apparently, obviously, he gets a lot of kudos. I don't know if people just tolerate him, or, and frankly, I don't know why he has such high ratings. But if he has high ratings because of stuff like this, that is an indicator to you of a segment of our society that's pretty messed up, to be honest. Because if he's behaving that way and they're agreeing with him, they're behaving the same way, you probably should share this podcast with them so that they could hear all of this. And then, what I think is interesting is, am I asking others to reveal themselves while I hide? When you start behaving like that, is Sean asking others to expose who they are while he hides behind his virtue signaling, while he hides behind his self-righteousness? Oh, Sean's a great guy because he's trying to get her, to admit to something, to cop to something. And I think it's interesting when he's sitting there saying, do you have a heart? Do you have a soul? And she's like, I don't kind of ascribe to that. I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, that's not her thing. So why is it, rhetorically, Sean, that you have to go down this road? And I think we know what it is, that when you are dissecting the forensics of self-righteousness, there's a lot to unpack there in terms of what you're not doing. Someone else's response to anything that you may say or do has nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with you. It's all about their prior experiences that have come to light, that are infiltrating their memories, their brain, their body, whatever emotions. Everything that comes together in that moment where they're having a reaction has nothing to do with you. It's all about them. Every interaction in life is that way. Anytime someone is reacting, whatever it is, it's all about them. It's never about you. But when does it become about you? When you decide to get into your own schmutz and shenanigans and tomfoolery, and you start being self-righteous, and you start deciding how the rest of the world should live, and that you don't have a heart and you don't have a soul. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Because you've lost your way. You've lost sight of the power of observation. You've lost sight of the idea of allowing a person to expose themselves for who they truly are. And I return to this phrase: you cannot live in responsibility and accountability. You can't even develop accountability and responsibility if you have your identity wrapped up and rooted in victimhood. That the world is happening to me instead of because of me. And the choices I've made and the outcomes that belong to me, that I'm the one that has to fix those things. I definitely want to encourage you. I'm going to leave the link down below in the show notes, but I definitely want to encourage you to go listen to that entire interview. It's not too long, but boy, you're just going to hear the repetitiveness from Hannity on there, and how he keeps really just badgering her to condemn things, and you got no heart, you got no soul, and I mean all of the self-righteous language that he uses, that he's trying to get her to do something, that manipulation, and wow, it's just wrought with all of that kind of rot with the rot. Yeah, it's again, this is just, me saying it, but it's pretty despicable behavior, because this woman, at least was, having the fortitude to say, hey, I'm willing to have this conversation with you, but he didn't want to have a conversation. He wanted to have a trial. And that's what that is all about. So there you go. Hey, listen, if today's episode kind of stirred something in you, sit with it. See how you think about it. See what what comes to mind as you go through your day and you're walking or you're doing whatever you're doing in life. And, these thoughts come to you about what I've discussed here, what you've been a part of. And, those moments, they have been for me, and I hope they are for you, that's where transformation starts. When we start contemplating something beyond just the surface, we start contemplating the substance. And this is where your power is. This is where your superpower is as a person, is when you are able to self-reflect. You can self-assess and self-correct, right? So here's this thought for consideration, right? Ideas for consideration. That it's not just about fixing a particular situation and what has occurred in your life, but it's also about you building a vision of what's possible, an aspiration, if you will, of you creating the standards of living for yourself rooted in accountability, responsibility. And then what happens is when the Sean Hannitys of your life appear, then you're getting better at recognizing it because you've gone through the things we've talked about in this podcast. You've forensically looked at and you dissect what is going on, and you go back and listen to the clip again and see all these places where it's just like he's just hammering this person. And honestly, I mean, in many ways, it's kind of rude that he doesn't allow her to finish a statement. And I like the fact that she even called him out on it. But you'll get better at recognizing the Sean Hannitys in your life through observation. And that can be a very powerful tool. And it's in those moments that you will have your small little epiphanies that you'll go, now I get it. And then you start moving through life and you keep moving that way. And you have these opportunities where things present themselves and you get to step back and go, oh, I remember something similar to this. And, self-evaluation belongs to me. I need to look and see, what is my contribution in these interactions. So, like it. Share it with your family and friends. You never know how it might help them on their journey. Send it to someone who's maybe stuck in their performance, but maybe they're ready for some harmony in their life. And if you feel that gut check today, tell me about it. Message me, comment, reach out through email. And always let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Until next time, stay sharp and stay sovereign. And I'll see you next week.